We made it. Okay.
Yay! How are you? Happy Monday.
Happy Monday. This time we get to dive into cholesterol.
Yes. And this is exciting because this could literally be a 2-hour lecture. So it's going to be interesting.
It literally could. And I have like a personal thing that's happened to me with cholesterol, which is somebody near and dear to me and my family was on a statin
Mm.
and has dementia. And
Um,
I lowered, well, anyway, we lowered the statin and suddenly cognitive functioning is better.
yes. Isn't that funny? But no, that's amazing. I'm glad. That's
I
yeah.
was like,
Yeah.
why are you sharper all of a sudden? And yeah, and then it dawned on me. Um,
Yeah.
so anyhow,
Yeah.
happy to be here. I'm Melanie of Root to Rise Wellness, and I support women over 40 experiencing anxiety, nervousness, and just overall gut inflammation, and looking to rebalance. And essentially, we work on rewiring the nervous system and understanding the body's needs because there's a lot of confusing information out there, and really connecting you to yourself and your inner power, your inner wisdom for healing, and just moving stuck energy, which I believe really leads to pain, inflammation, and lots of issues.
Mhm.
And I am joined here by Mavis,
Yeah.
who I alongside with when my clients need support in testing. And Mavis, will you let them know what you do?
Yes, thanks. So my name is Mavis. I'm with Flow Functional Wellness. We work with women 18 and up, all things functional medicine, whether that's hormone balance, hormone replacement therapy, gut health, detox health, metabolic health, you name it. We love to do it and help women find the best version of themselves.
Awesome. Okay. So thank you so much for being here. We are going to dive into a really important topic now. And
Yeah.
Mavis, why don't you get us started by explaining what cholesterol really is, and really draw some clarity on what is bad and what is good cholesterol. What does that mean for people? Because I think there's just a lot of misinformation out there and a lot of not understanding and covering up with statins. So go ahead.
Yes, 100%. And like I said, this could be a 2-hour lecture, so I'm going to make this as simple as possible. Cholesterol usually in general gets a really bad reputation. However, hear me out. We need cholesterol to live. Our cells need cholesterol, our brain needs cholesterol. We need cholesterol to make hormones, our cognitive function, like you were just talking about, Melanie. Cholesterol is so important, we would die without it. That's how important it is. And in fact, a lot of people don't realize this, but a lot of the cholesterol that we have in our body is really made by our own body, usually in the liver, right? So very little cholesterol that we're actually eating is being absorbed, although some of it is. And so people just don't realize that. So we need cholesterol to live. And so there's the quote unquote bad and quote unquote good cholesterol. So let me break those down in simple terms for people. So LDL is the quote unquote bad cholesterol, right? Is it all really bad? No, because like I just said, cholesterol is important. What is LDL doing? So think about it. I'm gonna kind of use the analogy, and I don't know if you've heard this, Melanie, or if you like this analogy, but I've kind of used like cars on a traffic highway system, right?
Mm-hmm.
So LDL is or think about it as the cars carrying the cholesterol to the cells or to where their destination is. So LDL is actually very important. However, it gets a bad reputation because of what happens to it. So think about the road conditions it's driving on, or the things that may happen to it as it's driving, right? Things that can kind of go awry and it can either set on fire or it can wreck or it can fall through a pothole or whatever the case may be, right?
Mm-hmm.
Trying to break this
Like
down.
now.
Yeah, I think it's good. I think it's good. So again, it's not necessarily a bad thing, but things can happen to it that make it dangerous for the body, dangerous for our blood vessels, and that can cause a whole host of things downstream, which we'll get into. But that's the LDL. That's the quote unquote what we call bad, even though it's not all bad, it's good. It's just it's in the wrong place at the wrong time, and then it gets considered bad, right? Then you
Mm-hmm.
have your HDL cholesterol, which is your quote unquote good cholesterol. Why do we say that's good? Because it carries cholesterol out of the arteries back to the liver so that we can get rid of it. And again, that's very important. We need that too. We need both, right? We need people carrying cholesterol to the cells and then back out of the cells through the arteries. So Both of
Mhm.
them are very, very important. And so I just kind of like to use the highway system as an example. And then, real quick, I just want to dive into the difference between, and we'll talk about testing towards the end, but the difference between LDLC and LDLP, because I think this is so important and I want
Right.
people to understand. So,
Yeah.
when you get cholesterol done on a traditional cholesterol panel, you will see LDLC. And if this is higher than a certain parameter, that is when conventional medicine will say, oh, you need to be on a statin, right? Which is one of the most common drugs that we give people when their LDL-C is elevated.
Right.
However, what is LDL-C? C, think about C, it's really like the density of the cholesterol, but think about C as cargo. This is the cargo in these vehicles on the highway system. It is measuring how much all of that cargo weighs that's being delivered by these vehicles. But it's
Mhm.
not telling us how many vehicles we have. What it's telling us how many vehicles we have is the LDLP particle number, right?
Mhm.
And so that's what's more valuable because we want to know how many cars are in the highway, not necessarily how much each car weighs, right? Because
Right.
if you have more cars on the highway, you're going to have more congestion, you're going to have traffic jams, things are going to happen, right? And that really equates to plaque buildup in the arteries and things like that. So hopefully that simple analogy kind of made sense for everyone and kind of gives them
Yeah.
an idea. Yeah.
Also, isn't it also the particle size of the LDL?
Yes, particle size matters too. If they're really
Mm-hmm.
small and really dense, then you're going to have more traffic jams.
Right. I like this. Okay. So thanks for that explanation. And I think it's
Mhm.
important for people to know that we'll talk more about statins and kind of like what they do and what they cover up. But essentially, what drives cholesterol high is actually inflammation, insulin issues, hormones that aren't
Mhm.
regulated, and kind of like just lack of dietary fiber, which is so much. And I feel like nowadays with all these special diets of keto and paleo, and a lot of them take out fiber, and it makes sense because fiber isn't easy to digest. So people need to feel good, right? They feel better when they take it out, but it's also causing this issue with cholesterol. So it's not a good long-term solution to take fiber out,
Yeah.
not all carbs are created equal.
Right.
So it really just matters. So anyhow, so inflammation, basically with chronic inflammation, as Mavis was saying, cholesterol is not the enemy. It's like the body's band-aid. So when there is inflammation, the LDL cholesterol deposits at inflammation sites to basically help repair the tissues. So things like the increased inflammation, like seed oils, and I know there's a lot of controversy on that, but I'm still on the side of that they're not good.
Me too.
Sugar, toxins, heavy metals, leaky gut, chronic stress, all that stuff that increases inflammation will also increase cholesterol, and not the good kind. And the other thing was insulin issues. So when you eat too much sugar or refined carbs, the body overproduces insulin. And so then you have this situation with insulin resistance, which also leads to oxidative stress and higher cholesterol. So
Yeah.
insulin, right? Blood sugar is a huge thing. And how do you balance blood sugar? You eat balanced meals, and you include protein and good fats, and you leave space between meals so that your body's migrating motor complex can flush
Yeah.
things out when it's supposed to, and you're not snacking all day and all those things. You're exercising.
Yeah.
Um, and then hormones. So thyroid, estrogen, cortisol, all of that affect cholesterol, and that's Mavis's like jam right there, the hormones. So
Yeah.
if the hormones are out of balance, we have more of that cholesterol dysfunction. And then lastly, fiber. So fiber binds to excess cholesterol and toxins in the gut, removing them through the bloodstream. So they
Mhm.
help when you have those traffic jams to move things. And so just simply increasing, like putting psyllium husk in your diet, flax
Yeah.
seeds, chia seeds also, they have omega-3, which is also good for decreasing inflammation. But by essentially one thing you can just do naturally is just increase fiber in your diet, and you notice that cholesterol levels improve when you do that. So yeah, just
Yeah.
wanted to mention all those. And let's see, now we're going to shift back to Mavis, who's going to talk about statins. Oh, I love it. Let's
Oh
take it apart.
boy. Oh my gosh. But real quick before that, you were talking about hormones. It's really interesting because I see patients that are going through menopause. You know, they're losing
Yeah.
estrogen. We see this directly reflected in their cholesterol panel. And then if we do replacement therapy, we see things start to regulate and smooth out. And it's just really amazing. Same thing with the thyroid, like you were saying. I mean, I can't tell you enough how important that is. And then, you know, like you were saying, Melly, it's not the problem. And we know if you look at the studies, a large number of people that are in hospitals with cardiac events, they have quote unquote normal LDL levels, right? And I mean, it's like, but what is high? Like you said, it might be their insulin, it might be their inflammation, it might be their CRP. So it's not just cholesterol. That is just one piece of the puzzle. And so, yeah, thank you for that, for all of that. That was great.
Yeah.
But yeah, so statins.
Statins
Oh boy,
save lives, right? Let's break this down.
statins. Oh, it just pains me. So what do statins do? So statins is one mechanism of action of family of drugs that are used for cholesterol issues. Okay, what do statins do? Statins, they affect an enzyme that enzyme makes cholesterol. So basically, what it's doing is it's cutting off the body's ability, or it reduces. It doesn't cut it off, but it reduces the body's ability to synthesize or make cholesterol particles. That's what this drug does, or this family of drugs they do. But why is that an issue? We just told you how important cholesterol was and how we need it for our cells, our brain, our hormones, every
Mm-hmm.
function in the body. So why would we, you know, give a drug? And I have practiced conventional medicine and I've prescribed several of these. So I'm not going to sit here and act like I haven't.
You
But
didn't
why would
know.
you
You
prescribe?
didn't know
No.
though. That's the thing. People don't know that it's masking and covering up like a bigger,
Yeah.
much bigger underlying issue.
Yes, exactly. But even common sense, if you think about it, why would we give a drug that's going to reduce our body's ability to make cholesterol, something that we need, right? When, like you said, there's so many other things that we can do. And so, anyway, lowering the LDL is not addressing the root cause of the problem. So, what are statins doing? Primarily, they're masking the real issue, like you were saying, and that's what they're doing. We also know that they reduce CoQ10, which in some people can lead to fatigue or muscle pain or things like that. We
Yeah.
know it also affects your body's ability to use insulin. So it can also cause insulin resistance in some people. Like we've seen that, right? And so, and like you were saying at the very beginning, when your LDL gets too low, what is this doing to your cognitive function? What is this doing to your brain function?
Yeah. My personal experience with my family member is just my personal science that, like, wow, we lowered that statin and you're starting to come back to life. Also, you mentioned something really important with CoQ10, which is, it's helps your body convert food into energy or ATP or energy, and really important for cardiovascular health. And what I'm noticing too when I get clients is that they're on a statin and their doctor hasn't actually prescribed CoQ10,
Right,
and the statin depletes CoQ10. And so,
right.
how are you giving a statin without that?
Yes, yes. And secondly, part of the conventional protocol is to put all diabetics on a statin when we know it affects our ability to regulate insulin glucose.
Right. So it's making that problem worse.
Yeah,
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 it's huge.
yeah. It's mind blowing, and yeah, and I think just to wrap up statins, if you really look at the studies, particularly with primary prevention, there is little to no impact on mortality, particularly in women. I mean, that's just the facts. And if you really look into that, that's just the case. So, you know, I only work with women. So I'm trying to, if I can, get all of my women patients off statins and address these root causes and really get to
Address
the
these.
bottom of the issue.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So, I would love to talk about a few natural kind of solutions. We talked about fiber being one, and in terms of supplements and herbs, I like Google, which is a resin, comes from the myrrh tree. It's very popular, used in Ayurvedic health, and basically it helps to basically do essentially what statins do, but it's natural. So you don't have the negative side effects. It also stimulates the thyroid. It stimulates metabolism if you're trying to lose weight. It's anti-inflammatory. Um, it has, it's not for everyone. Like we're all different in our needs, but it is something to look into. There is a lot of controversy with red yeast rice, which is now regulated by the FDA. And I would just say, like, I still think from what I've learned that that's still helpful. It's just that you need an organic, good quality one. What do you think, Mavis?
Yeah, I 100% agree. And that's kind of like my last line one that I use if none of my other ones are working. Yeah.
None of your okay.
Yeah.
Last line of defense. Yeah.
Yeah.
The other thing, like, so fiber, Google, the other thing would be it's good to also like niacin. A B5 is really, really good to also take. It's helpful for balancing cholesterol levels, especially if you are on a statin. It reduces the LDL, quote unquote, the bad, but not really bad. We just talked about you need further investigator, but it also lowers triglycerides and all that. So that's another one. And then if you're having blood sugar issues, berberine, which comes from Oregon grape. I know we all I really like the whole plant if I was to work with it. But berberine is good for blood sugar issues and metabolism as well. And then there's so much milk thistle because statins, whether or not you're on them, everyone's liver seems to be these days needs support. So milk thistle is like an excellent liver. I would say liver tonic and stuff. So yeah, artichoke is another one that's great for the liver. So there's just a lot to explore. It really depends on the person and what their needs are. And I really like ubiquinol as a easier digestible form of CoQ10 for the body, and helps you to also have more energy and all that. So that's an added bonus. So yeah, now we're gonna flip back to Mavis. Mavis, I forget, are you talking about testing now or something else?
Yes, it looks like testing. Yeah, thanks for sharing all those. I use quite a few of those, but there's so many things to use that just can overall decrease inflammation, right? And so other things that we're looking at when I'm working with patients is like, okay, where are these other underlying causes of inflammation in the body that we're not addressing, right? Whether that's in the gut or they have, chronic infections that they don't know about. There's so many can be like hidden things in the body that are causing inflammation, and addressing those is super important. All right, so yes, it looks like the last topic here is the testing. Okay, so I kind of dived into this a little bit in the beginning where I talked about LDL-C, which is the marker on like a traditional lipid panel versus the LDL-P particle number, which is on a more advanced testing. So I'm going to just say a few things here. These are some advanced markers that you want to get checked, right? If you're really looking to know what your status is, if you have a family history, all of these things, these are some markers that you want to be looking out for. So the particle number, LDL particle, and like Melanie, you were saying, the size matters too, right? So looking at the size of your particles and how many numbers you have for both LDL and HDL can be really helpful. LP little a, that's actually a marker of genetic risk, but I have seen people change this. Some people will say, oh, you'll never change the LPA. I have seen this happen on people because, again, our genetics are just a small part of the picture, right? Our environment and our lifestyle can really impact our genetics. So that was one.
Sorry to interrupt. Are you talking about the APO?
No, the LP little a.
Okay, so you're not talking about APO. Because I've heard a lot about ApoE and ApoA and how they're also really important, but I truthfully don't know too much about them.
Yeah, so those are some other ones too. So the ApoB and the ApoA, those are more, so the ApoB is a really good one to get, especially if you can't get the LDL particle number, because it's really closely related to your LDL particle number, the ApoB. The ApoA is more closely related to your HDL particle number, because they're basically the passengers in those cars, right? So the ApoB is like a passenger in the LDL car, and the ApoA is like a passenger in the HDL car. And so looking at those can give you a better indicator. Actually, those are better predictors than the LDL-C on a traditional panel. So, some of these tests are very advanced and you might not be able to get access to all of them, but the ApoA and ApoB lipoproteins can be very helpful because they'll give you more insight to the particle numbers, particularly if you can't get the particle numbers. But if you can get the particle numbers, that would be even better.
But you actually provide that in your
Yeah.
blood panels. You do a comprehensive lipid panel that looks at ApoE and ApoA, right?
Yes, I have several different panels I use depending on what patient I'm working with or whether they're going through my lab shop. So there's some differences there, but all of these advanced markers are available through functional medicine testing. Yes. Yeah.
Awesome.
And then we've already talked about CRP before. Like I know we did on a previous lab how important that is, and insulin and glucose and homocysteine and all these things.
So you're not just looking at cholesterol. There's a ton of stuff to, yeah.
There's so many things to look at that are not, let me repeat, not on a traditional cholesterol panel. But where are these decisions being made, particularly when giving someone a statin, which is a huge decision to make? By the way, we don't give these to women trying to become pregnant. That should tell you enough right there. But with these decisions that we're making are made off a traditional cholesterol panel, not all these other markers.
And they oftentimes are looking at the total number and not looking so much even at the ratio. And even if they're just looking at the ratio, they're not looking at the particle size or anything. So that's really good, Mavis, that you do that. Anything else you wanted to add before we wrap it up?
I mean, there's so many things we could say.
All right, one more minute.
Let me think. I did find, do I have another minute?
One more minute, and then I think we gotta.
Okay. I did find something really interesting. This was from a 2024 study that came out last year. This is interesting. You might find this interesting too, Melanie. But they were looking at CRP, the marker of inflammation, and LDL cholesterol levels, and they saw that it followed a J curve. So let me break this down. When you're at very low levels, like if someone's LDL level was really low, they noticed that their CRP was actually higher. Very interesting. When someone had moderate LDL levels, they actually had lower inflammation. Their body was in a more balanced state. And then if they had really, really high LDL levels, their inflammation increased again. So I think this just goes back to kind of like the Goldilocks theory with a lot of things in the body, is that it's all about getting the right balance, not having it too high or too low. So I thought that was a really interesting study from last year.
Yeah, totally. Great insights. And thank you for sharing that. Yeah, just about being in balance and thinking about all the ways we can stay in balance. And part of that is also managing stress, cortisol, all of that, which we talked about in our previous live, which is available to watch. So yeah, that was awesome. Thanks so much. So let's wrap up with how everyone can get good testing and get support for balancing cholesterol. Obviously, you can talk to your providers and see what they can provide for you. If you're looking for additional support, Mavis and I are here. I support women, as I said, on like a treatment plan, oftentimes that Mavis will provide, and just on ways in which to balance naturally. I'm using natural and holistic tools. I'm using plants, using mindfulness, all those kinds of things, moving stuck energy. And I work here in Hillsborough, North Carolina, and virtually. And Mavis is virtual as well. And you can let people know how they can get hold of you.
Yeah. So if you're interested in ordering these lab markers that I was telling you about, if you go to my link in bio, you will see my lab shop. You do not have to be a patient to order through that. You can go through there and order your own test. You will get an interpretation from me, but there's a really good test in there. It's the cardiometabolic profile by Doctor's Data, I believe. It has everything in there from insulin, all the metabolic stuff, all the cardiac advanced stuff we just talked about. That's a really good panel to get if you're looking to find that.
I love that. Yeah. So we're empowering people by knowing what tools, what blood work to look for, and so that you have more information and you're empowered and you understand your cholesterol better. Thank you so much for joining us. We will be taking a little break from our Monday lives, but returning next month with some interviews with each other on different topics.
I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, me too. Thanks for watching, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye.